universe and the interweb. Let's get started with the Jaya Radha Madhava prayers. Okay. Hare Krishna. Wow, it's a tight one. Okay, that's it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavala Giri Vadadari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janarandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Privraja Acharya Stot Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivraja Acharya Stot Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Sekaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hari Hari Bol. Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vikasa Swamiti Namaste Saraswati Devi Bodhavani Prashavini Vishesha Srimati Paschati Deshatavine. Today we are studying and reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Verse 23. So we'll start call and response with the Sanskrit. Yadasya nabhyanalinad aham asam mahatmana navidam yagya samparan purushav shavayavan rite Yadasya nabhyannalinad. Aham asam mahatmana. Navidam yagya sambharan. Purushavayavanrite. Yadasya nabhyannalinad. Aham asam mahatmana. Navidam yagya sambharam. Purushavayavanrite. Devotees in the temple? Anyone? Ahamasam mahatmana. Navidam yagya sambharan. Purushavayavanrite. Yadasya navyanalitam. Aham asam mahatmana. Navidam yagya sambharan. Purushavayavarite. Yadasya navayanalidad. Aham mahatmana. Navidam yagya sambharan. Purushavayavanrite. Yadasya navayanalidad. Aham asam mahatmana. Navidam yagya sambharan. Purushavayavanrite. Yadasya navayanalidad. Aham asam mahatmana. Navidam yagya sambharan. Purushavayavanrite. Yadasya navayanalidad. Aham asam mahatmana. Navidam yagya sambharan. Purushavayavanrite. Anyone online would like to chant the verse? No?
Yadasya nabhyannalinad. Aham asam mahatmana. Navidam yajna sambharam. Purushavayavanrite. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Yadasya naibhon nalinad asham aham asam mahatmana navidam yagna sambharan purusha abhavan rite. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, word for word.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Go ahead.
Yadasya nabhyan nalinad aham sammahatmanaha navidam yagya sambaram purusha vayavam vite. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, synonyms. Yada, at the time of. Asya, his. Nabhyat, from the abdomen. Nalinat, from the lotus flower. Aham, myself. Asam, took my birth. Maha Atmana, of the great person. Na avidham, did not know. Yajna, sacrificial. Sabharam, ingredients. Purusha, of the Lord. Of Ayavan, personal bodily limbs. Rite, except. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When I was born from the abdominal lotus flower of the Lord, Mahavishnu, the great person, I had no ingredients for sacrificial performances except the bodily limbs of the great personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma, the creator of the cosmic manifestation, is known as Swayam Bhu, or one who is born without father and mother. The general process is that a living creature is born out of the sex combination of the male father and the female mother. But Brahma, the firstborn living being, is born out of the abdominal lotus flower of the Mahavishnu plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. The abdominal lotus flower is part of the Lord's bodily limbs, and Brahma is born out of the lotus flower. Therefore, Lord Brahma is also a part of the Lord's body. Brahma, after his appearance in the gigantic hollow of the universe, saw darkness and nothing else. He felt perplexity, and from his heart he was inspired by the Lord to undergo austerity, thereby acquiring the ingredients for sacrificial performances. But there was nothing besides the two of them, namely the personality of Mahavishnu and Brahma himself, born of the bodily parts of the Lord. For sacrificial performances, many ingredients were in need, especially animals. The animal sacrifice is never meant for killing the animal, but for achieving the successful result of the sacrifice. The animal offered in the sacrificial fire is, so to speak, destroyed, but the next moment it is given a new life by dint of the Vedic hymns chanted by the expert priest. When such an expert priest is not available, the animal sacrifice in the fire of the sacrificial altar is forbidden. Thus, Brahma created even the sacrificial ingredients out of the bodily limbs of the Garbhodakshai Vishnu, which means that the cosmic order was created by Brahma himself. Also, nothing is created out of nothing, but everything is created from the person of the Lord. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 10:8, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Everything is made from my bodily limbs, and I, therefore, I am, therefore, the original source of all creations. The impersonalists argue that there is no use in worshiping the Lord when everything is nothing but the Lord himself. The personalist, however, worships the Lord out of a great sense of gratitude, utilizing the ingredients born out of the bodily limbs of the Lord. The fruits and flowers are available from the body of the earth, and yet Mother Earth is worshipped by the sensible devotee with ingredients born from the earth. Similarly, Mother Ganges is worshipped by the water of the Ganges, and yet the worshiper enjoys the results of such worship. Worship of the Lord is also performed by the ingredients born from the bodily limbs of the Lord, and yet the worshiper, who is himself a part of the Lord, achieves the result of devotional service to the Lord. While the impersonalist wrongly concludes that he is the Lord himself, a personalist, out of a great gratitude, worships the Lord in devotional service. Knowing perfectly well that nothing is different from the Lord, the devotee therefore endeavors to apply everything in the service of the Lord because he knows that everything is the property of the Lord and no one can claim anything as one's own. This perfect conception of oneness helps the worshiper in being engaged in his loving service. Whereas the impersonalist, being falsely puffed up, remains a non-devotee forever without being recognized by the Lord. Om Jnana Timirhandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Shtapitam Jaina Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadhamayam Tadati Sva Pandatikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vikasha Swami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gaudavani Prachaline Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschate Deshatarine. So, I don't think I chanted Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, did I? Let me do that. Just although it's out of order, we'll do it just to invoke. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, thank you. Before I begin, I'd just like to ask for the blessings of all the devotees here and all the senior devotees throughout the whole universe to give me blessings and help me speak something in line with the message of Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas. So I'll read this verse once again. Very cool verse. When I was born from the abdominal lotus flower of the Lord, Mahavishnu, the great person, I had no ingredients for sacrificial performances except the bodily limbs of the great personality of Godhead. So here we have Lord Brahma describing his experience of being born and the creation and where he came from. And as he describes, he was born from the abdominal lotus flower of the Lord. So that's pretty far out. We've never seen that happen with our own personal eyes. So it may be difficult to conceive of that. How does something like that happen? A superior being like Lord Brahma, someone that from our own minds we can't really conceive of the power that Lord Brahma has. He's, as it's described in the purport here, he's creating the whole cosmic order. And the whole cosmic order is being born out of just his mental cognition. And as Brahma's describing here, he has the no ingredients for the sacrificial performances, except the bodily limbs of the great personality of Godhead. Now, how could we also conceive of that? That Lord Brahma is just being born out of the lotus flower of the navel of Mahavishnu. And then he's recognizing that he doesn't have the sacrificial ingredients. So he uses the limbs of the personality of Godhead. It's really far out. They say truth is stranger than fiction. But the question is, how do you really conceive of this as truth? Because we've been led to believe that everything needs to have a logical progression, and that there is an explanation and a conceivable ability to perceive what's happening, track it from the beginning, and categorize it, and that we can, with our senses, perceive everything and then explain it and figure it all out. But what we understand from Srila Prabhupada and the Vedic scriptures is that actually this is not an accurate way to try to understand our surroundings and understand ourselves. And the reason why this is not an acceptable way is because as we perceive things from our own senses and our own mind, there's 4 defects. All conditioned living beings have 4 defects. The first defect is to commit mistakes. Just like we think we discover something, but actually it's already been discovered. Actually, what we think we discovered is not what we thought it was. Does anyone have an example of that?
Christopher Columbus discovered America.
Very good. We're sitting on an example right now. And the people who are living here, Christopher Columbus, what did he name them? Indians. Why did he name them Indians? He thought he was in India. Because he had a misconception around where he actually was. So this is the first. So what we're looking at is, how can we actually understand reality? How can we understand what is our position? Can we come up with it and figure it all out with our own minds and our own senses, which is what we're told to do, which is what our modern approach is so ardently proposing? Well, the Vedas are saying no, because one, there's the 4 defects, the ability or the tendency to commit mistakes. And the second defect?
Cheating.
Well, that is one, but the one that we're saying is second is the tendency to become illusioned. And it's called pramada. And so we're illusioned. And a good example of this is that almost everyone is under the illusion that they are their body and their mind. This is an illusion. Although, and I think Einstein said, reality is an illusion, although a very persistent one. So we are consistently in illusion. And even when we can recognize that we are an illusion, many times we stick with that illusion, which leads to the next one, which is vipralipsa, or the tendency to cheat. So even when we know we're in illusion and that others are in illusion, we lie about it, or we pretend that we're not. So this is ingrained in the conditioned living entity, to have this tendency to cheat others and to cheat ourselves. Actually, Srila Prabhupada's guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, made the statement that this society is a society of the cheaters and the cheated. And I think we can all identify with having the experience of feeling cheated. And maybe we don't identify so much with cheating others, but if we really look, we can probably see where we've done that too. So the fourth defect of the conditioned humans is kadanapatava, is the imperfection of our gross senses. So, for example, no matter how high-powered a telescope or a microscope might be, there's a limitation from our physical senses. So, however high quality the glass is in the microscope or in the telescope, however sharp that camera lens is, our senses, our eyesight, our seeing, is limited. And in that limitation, there's only so much we can actually perceive. And we know for certain there is so much that's outside of our perceptive ability that's even going around us in this moment right now. And even other types of living entities can see so many things that we can't see, or hear things that we can't hear, like ultrasonic sound, or how an insect sees many different aspects of color variations. So there's aspects of reality that, as we in the conditioned state or with our limited senses, cannot perceive and cannot accurately, even if we can see it, what is that? As you know, I can't see what's over there. It's on the sheet. I can't really read it. And so these four defects, these limit our ability to make an accurate assessment of the reality that we are operating in. So that leads us to the Vedic, or the kind of enlightened way of trying to understand. How do we understand? If we can't make the assessment on our own, we have to take knowledge from a source that can understand it, that has an understanding of the whole truth of reality. So this is as I mentioned, a very different type of approach than what we're used to trying. So we're very eager to try to speculate about our reality, to try to come up with our own reality, and to try to figure it all out. In fact, modern science essentially is it's like the art of trying to become independent of the laws of nature. There's always this, Prabhupada would call it, it's like a post-dated check the idea is that we're going to set up a situation where eventually we're going to overcome these challenges in the world. And the what are the four challenges? The four big problems that everyone is really facing? Birth, death, old age, disease. This is the real problem. That as human beings, we ultimately are being directed to strive to overcome these problems. There's Krishna is maintaining us on the material level. So many living entities are being maintained, but we live in this state of anxiety that we're having to deal with all of our problems that are facing us on this daily, day-to-day level, thinking that we are going to, organize everything right and get what we need to so that we can be the controller and we can become independent from the laws of nature. And we look to science and we look to the establishments, we look to the educational institutions to give us the solution, to hold our hand and to give us safety and shelter. And we find that those institutions and those governments and those big industries, many cases, they don't have our best interest at heart because they don't have the real understanding of the truth of who they are, because they're basing all of their direction and guidance and goals on a false premise. The false premise is that they are the controller and that they are independent from the laws of nature and that they are their bodies and that the point of human life is to enjoy the body. So when we surrender to this, what's described as the blind leading the blind, we end up being dragged along. Like it's said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you're getting the blind leading the blind into a ditch. And there's a level of comfort, there's a level of, satisfaction that we're kind of operating on in this kind of material atmosphere that keeps us just good enough to keep going. But ultimately, if we're missing out, and that's a very difficult, actually, not difficult, but it's a unfortunate situation, although we think we're in a fortunate situation because we're comfortable. But then we're not pushed towards a higher purpose. We're not pushed towards trying to find something different, something better, something greater with our human form of life, because it's described that this human form of life is meant for achieving spiritual realization, for achieving Krishna consciousness. Out of the 8.4 million species of life, this human form of life is a perfect opportunity for us because we have the ability to conceive of the higher truths. And there's just enough suffering there, as if we're in this, demigods, or we go above and beyond this. There's so much enjoyment that it's very difficult to come out of that. So when we come into this human form of life, there's just enough suffering to push us into the direction of spiritual realization. But also we see so many millions and billions of people are not accepting this suffering as a fortunate situation. They're accepting it as something that they have to overcome. So they're utilizing the scientific method, the scientific approach of perceiving and, trying to optimize everything and getting it to a point where they can actually find happiness. But it's not happening. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with trying to actually take our consciousness and utilize direction and guidance from higher spiritual truths, higher spiritually evolved living entities, and ultimately from Krishna himself, which is in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic scriptures. But we are accepting that is the supreme truth. It is not a position that we are required to evaluate reality and come up with a solution. The solution is already there. And that solution is given to us, and we're guided and we're directed by the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. Even though it may seem hard to believe or hard to accept. I mean, from the modern mindset, how could we think that a person was born out of a lotus flower and they created the world from sacrificial limbs of the Lord? But ultimately, we all have to come to a point of accepting or believing something that is very difficult to conceive of. Because what is the general idea? That there was a big bang, and the big bang came out of nothing. And from the big bang, order came. And here we have it. Now we're sitting here eating Doritos and watching television. Well, we're not, but some people are. Which goes against many of the laws of science in a sense. I mean, how are we seeing explosions creating order? But we're believing and accepting that a bang happened, and then from that bang, everything is perfectly in order. And then we have consciousness and love and hate, and all of these things somehow arose out of nothing. So to accept that also, I mean, if you really boil it down, it's very difficult to accept. But we have to accept that there's something happened to start something, because here we are. So the point that we're really trying to understand, and from this verse where it can be very difficult to conceive of, is that we're accepting knowledge from the Vedic presentation. The human beings, when we're trying to speculate and evaluate the world around us, we have the defects. We should recognize that we have these defects and accept knowledge from the higher purpose, or from the higher source, which is ultimately coming from a higher purpose in the human life, which is to come out of this conception of the physical body and the mind being who we are, because who we really are is an eternal spirit soul, and that eternal spirit soul is full of bliss and full of knowledge. So we're seeking after bliss, we're seeking after knowledge outside of ourselves, but actually it's already within us. So how do we achieve that? How do we uncover that? Well, that goes on to the next point in this verse and this purport, which is the discussion of sacrifice. Now, myself, and I think many other people would think, when you start hearing about sacrifices, especially when we're talking about animal sacrifices, we're thinking something very gruesome. Like I was mentioning this earlier, like there's this movie, Indiana Jones, which I don't know which one it was, but there was like this point where Indiana Jones goes into this, like, he's in this like temple in a Kali temple in India or something. And they're like doing this crazy sacrifice, and there's fire, and they're like sacrificing monkeys or something like that. And it's just like really freaky and far out. So like when I think about sacrifices before I came to Krishna consciousness, I think like, are we talking about sacrifices like that? Like you got like fire, or like the Aztec ancients like sacrificing people and the sun god? Like sacrifice, although we're seeing in this verse that animal sacrifice, when performed by qualified priests, is accepted, but in the sense that when it's done, the animal is achieving a new body. But that in this modern age, the sacrifice is, in the age of Kali, is the Sankirtan Yajna, the Sankirtan sacrifice, the Sankirtan austerity, which is chanting the holy names of Krishna together, congregationally. So just as Lord Brahma here had to establish and create the universe from the then get the ingredients for his sacrificial performance from the limbs of Krishna, of the great personality of Godhead, we too have to establish our own creation and understanding of ourselves through the sacrifice of chanting the names of God and of Krishna. So Krishna's name is non-different than Krishna, which as I was reading this purport today, I hadn't thought of this before, but it came into my head as it's described in the purport that we're worshiping the Ganges with the water of the Ganges, and we're getting the result. We're worshiping the earth with ingredients from the earth and getting the result. In the same way, we're worshiping Krishna with Krishna. Because Krishna is not different than his name. It never dawned on me until I was reading this. So we're actually worshiping Krishna with Krishna. And that's a sacrifice. That's allowing for the emergence of within ourselves, of our spiritual self to come out, and the contaminations that we are covering us and keeping us in illusion to actually fall away. So it's the most auspicious opportunity for us to bring ourselves into this Sankirtan Yajna, chanting the names of Krishna so that we can remove the illusion, remove the contamination, and see the truth of who we really are. So we don't need to sacrifice animals or anything else in this age because we don't have the qualification for that. What we simply can do, we've been given this very easy and simple process. Lord Chaitanya brought this to distribute the love of God to all living entities, even those that don't deserve it. In this very difficult time. So on one side, it's said that Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. And we can all see that it does seem like there's an ocean of faults. And it can seem like, how can we navigate our way through this difficult world that we live in? But we're given the direction and the guidance to just bring ourselves back. Chant Hare Krishna, perform Sankirtan. And from there, everything will blossom out like the lotus flower, like Lord Brahma coming out of the lotus flower of Krishna. So we don't have to overcomplicate it. I have the tendency to do that. I'm sure this is something we if we bring it back to the source of what is really the bona fide sacrifice for this age, then we can attain the true purpose of our life. So one other point of this purport is that Krishna says, or Prabhupada says, that the devotees, he speaks about impersonalism here. I won't get into that too much here, but he speaks about gratitude, that the devotees are having gratitude. Gratitude for what? That we have this opportunity to worship and serve Krishna, and that we've come to the position of having the knowledge and ability to make that connection in our life. So this is a very worthwhile point to meditate on and to allow to come up for us, is this gratitude. It's easy to start to feel like contemptuous or resentful or something in relation to things not going our way in spiritual life and material life. Like that energy can flow into us. But if we can battle it back with the mindful practice of gratitude for what we've been given and the intelligence that we have and the ability to actually recognize our position and come closer to Krishna, then it will help us and guide us in our spiritual life. So I'd like to open up for any discussion. There's a lot of interesting points in this verse, in this purport. If anyone has any questions or discussions that they'd like to say in relation to this, let's do it. We can start with anyone in the temple room. Any thoughts that have come up? Yes.
Thanks for the class. It was nice. I had some work stuff happening while you were reading the purport. Where he says, I have nothing but the sacrificial limbs of the Lord to use. What exactly does it talk about that, or does Prabhupada anywhere talk about what exactly that means?
Not really.
Like, I'm trying to picture, I don't have that.
Yeah. So I think it gets in the verse before this and the verse after it. It discusses it a little bit more.
Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't say much. So it says the abdominal lotus flower is part of the Lord's bodily limbs, and Brahma is born out of the lotus flower. So yeah, somehow he's connecting in with the limbs of Krishna to bring out the sacrificial ingredients.
Okay.
But I can't say much more on it.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
The concept of animal sacrifice, even that is somewhat bewildering.
Yeah.
Like, just knowing what we know with the treatment of animals. Like we would think, like when you talk about animal sacrifice, like you were explaining in the movie, you know, you think it is some type of satanic ritual.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see how animals are maybe not sacrificed, but killed. I mean, they're not for a sacred purpose, but they're killed all the time. And that's what you kind of equate to. You know, it's like this mass slaughter of animals. And he was Lord Buddha. One of the purposes of his incarnation was that people were utilizing the sacrifice of animals when they were unqualified.
Mm-hmm.
It was forbidden, but yet they used it to justify eating meat and just acting in ways that were inappropriate. So he denounced the Vedas and then had to get built back up again.
Mm-hmm.
So just the class made me think about that, how glad for this the sacrifice of the Sankirtan movement.
Yeah.
And that we don't have to navigate through animal sacrifice in this particular time that we're living in.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those, another inconceivable points in this, that animal sacrificing, and yeah, it's difficult to consider that, but as Srila Prabhupada is describing here, you know, there's a, where is it here? That the animal sacrifice is never meant for killing the animal, but for achieving the successful results of the sacrifice. The animal offered in the sacrificial fire is, so to speak, destroyed, but the next moment is given a new life by the dint of Vedic hymns chanted by the expert priests. So that's like, if we try to use our conditioned mind to conceive of that, it's, yeah, we can't understand how that happens, but
I guess because we have no experience of it.
Yeah.
Right. The only thing we have experience of is this mass slaughter of animals that goes on every day.
Yeah.
And you would wonder if it was a practice that was accepted today, how it would just be misconstrued.
Yeah.
What's the difference between one and the other? You know,
Right.
You see that way. For all the great kings of previous ages, they all had their, like,
Rajasuya.
yeah, like during like the coronation, the Ashwamedha sacrifices.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a bona fide practice. I think it was the Shankazi when he asked Lord Chaitanya Because Lord Chaitanya was talking about that you can't eat meat, and Lord Chaitanya, told him that of the things that were forbidden in this age, sacrificing animals is forbidden.
Well, unfortunately, there's plenty of animal slaughter and a sacrifice going on, but in the wrong way. So we'll keep chanting Hare Krishna. Keep ourselves far away from that as we can.
Just in terms of gratitude, just being grateful for the Sankirtan Yajna process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's saved us.
It's become so simple for us that we almost take it for granted.
Yeah.
The simplicity.
Yeah. That's where it's said, the Kali Yuga is the ocean of faults, but at the same time, demigods are lining up to take birth on the Earth planet as human beings because of the ability to gain this very rare opportunity to gain the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And ultimately, come out of the material engagement, to go back to the spiritual world, to come out of this place we've gotten ourselves into, that's causing so much repeated birth and death, that it has us in so much illusion. We have one, Bhakti David, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
I was just looking up that in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11 in the purport, it says about an animal sacrifice is perfectly performed. The sacrificed animal immediately goes to the heavenly planets of the demigods and the forefathers. Because I was wondering what kind of what happens to the living entity in the form of an animal when it's sacrificed? Is it beneficial or is it some kind of punishment? So I was kind of interested in finding that out, and just thought I'd bring that up. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so they go to the heavenly planets. But they also get a new body, fresh body. When I understand the animals, when they're sacrificed, it's like older animals. So, yeah. Anything else out there? Anyone else want to say anything? Want to share anything or any points to make? All right. Well, thank you all for coming. And see you next time. Hare Krishna. Vanchakopa Trivyaschar Kripa Sindhu Vivacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Thank you.